Right. Good afternoon and good morning to those who are in certain parts of the African continent. I am Zukiswa Wanner, and I am the curator for Artistic Encounters, currently on display at Strauhof, Zurich, and running until September the 3rd. It's organized by the Litar Foundation and Strauhof, and it's funded by Edwige-Renée Dro, and of course, it's curated by me. I have with me Edwige-Renée Dro and Sandra Tamele, and our topic is found in translation. And we're talking on this particular topic because Edwige and Sandra are the two people who translated some of the texts that we have utilized for litafrika Artistic Encounters exhibition. In the exhibition, we've got 8 texts, and these 8 texts have been translated into Portuguese, into English, into French, which are the 3 major so-called European or colonial languages in Africa. But additionally, they have been translated into German because they're in exhibition in Zurich, and they have been translated by our wonderful partners in Brazil, Uniperiferous, into Spanish as well, which is where, if you'd like to read the text, you can read them. Our artists are Abubakar Adam Ibrahim, Jennifer Makumbi, Ishmael Bear, Onjaki, Virgilia Ferrao, Fisto Monda Mujela, and who else have I forgotten? Angela Makolwa, and yeah, so we've got 8 artists. And as such, maybe let me just get into it right now and introduce you to my panelists. With me, I have Sandra Tamele. Sandra holds a bachelor degree in architecture. So I don't know. She came to us by way of architecture, which is, I think, an artistic way of coming to us because it's a beautiful science. But her love for languages and reading spurred her to literary projects. In 2007, she published the first work that she translated and has since translated 70 novels and short story collections written by, among others, Nobel Literature Laureate Wole Soyinka and Naguib Mahfouz. Understanding the importance of translation in 2015. Yes, you can applaud. She started hosting an annual literary translation competition among young Mozambicans, which has led to the establishment of a publishing house, Editora 3009. Tamele and a publishing house were recipient of the London Book Fair International Excellence for Literary Translation Initiative Award in 2021. And importantly this year, Tamele's translation of Yara Nakana Montero's Loose Ties, which is part of the exhibition, has been translated, was longlisted for the Dublin Impact Award. So please, everybody, welcome to Sandra. And Sandra, can we have a hello?
Hello, Zukiswa. Having you read my bio makes me like, I don't know, it feels like a different person, a different woman altogether. And I'm so happy to be here. So glad that you invited me to be here. And Edwige, it's always a pleasure to share a panel with you. So looking forward to this.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sandra. And, you know, I'm very excited. You don't even know, like I'm grinning right now, but I can't put on my camera because it's iffy. Network in Berlin seems to be iffy. Well, in the place I'm in Berlin right now. My second panelist is Edwige-Renée Dro. Edwige is a writer, literary translator, and literary activist from Côte d'Ivoire. Her short stories and articles have been published in anthologies such as Relations, New Daughters of Africa, Africa 39, the East African Literary and Cultural Studies, This is Africa, etc. She is the translator of Aya de Apollon's Seven by Marguerite Abu in English, with anthologies Les Heures de sur la rive du lac, which I worked with her, Waterbirds on the Lake Shore in English and French, the children's book Red Doors by Shanaz Patel, A Dream of Birds, the short story Petit Pas by Henry Boom, Little Pa in English, which has been on Audible as part of Afrolit Now. Edwige is a 2021 Writing Fellow of the Iowa International Writing Program. Importantly for all of us, she founded in 1949 the Library of Women Writing from Africa and the Black World in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, which is why we must all go to Abidjan. So welcome, Edwige. It's good to see you.
Zukiswa, thank you so much. It is a shame that your video is iffy today, because when you say you are every woman, you are literally every woman. But yeah, it is a pleasure to be here, and also with you, Sandra. I'm sure this is going to be great already. And to the Stiftung Litar and everybody, thank you.
Right. We're going to start this. I warned you guys about this before. You did quite a few of the translations from English into French and from English into French and Portuguese French to English. So I think, Sandra, I shall start with you. Can you read us an excerpt of something that you wrote, something that you translated in the anthology that we did for Artistic Encounters from the essays?
Zukiswa, I'll need a moment for that because I had a complicated day. So if Edwige could go ahead while I get ready,
fantastic,
please.
Sandra. Edwige, let's start with you in that case while Sandra tries to get something.
Sorry, you would think after these many years of manipulating Zoom, I will not unmute myself. I am going to read, I hesitated, but then I'm going to go with one of my other favorite person in a African literary scene, altogether. Do I read it in a translation, Zukiswa, or?
Yeah, I think it would be lovely if you read the translation of it. Or what are you comfortable with, actually? Let's have fun with this, as always.
Okay, let me read it in a translation first, and then I'll read it in the English. So this is an extract by Abubakar Adam Ibrahim. You knew this was
I knew you were going to talk about you.
I mean, I was going to read Yara Monteiro, but you know what? Ibrahim it is. So we start right at the beginning, actually, of the text. Right, so this is the extract that I'm sure it is being exhibited now. I begin. Il escalada une nouvelle fois sa clôture, comme il l'avait déjà fait 2 fois, à 11h15, quand il savait, après mûre réflexion, que si elle n'était pas allée à la mosquée, elle serait seule. Ayant fait le tour de la clôture, il jeta un coup d'œil de derrière le mur et la vit arrosée des pétunias, qui n'était pas là la dernière fois qu'il avait pris la liberté de s'inviter. Il la regarda prendre de l'eau dans un bol jaune et arroser les plantes. Elle posa le bol et se redressa, une main dans le dos, de l'eau s'écoulant des doigts de l'autre. Elle s'est tournée lentement et leurs regards se sont croisés. Il est sorti de derrière le mur et elle a tenté de se couvrir les seins avec une main, puis a laissé tomber. Bonjour, sa voix affaiblie, mais il a brièvement incliné la tête et a levé les mains. Elle a placé sa main sur son cœur qui battait la chamade. J'ai juste ramené ton téléphone, tu comprends? Comme promis. Il a mis une main dans la poche, son autre main toujours levée, et en a sorti le téléphone. Il a tendu vers elle et elle a regardé l'objet pendant un moment. Finalement, elle a hoché la tête. Il s'est avancé lentement et lui a tendu le téléphone. Désolé pour tout. Il a regardé passer son pouce sur le téléphone comme si elle voulait réaffirmer sa propriété. marquer sa possession comme un animal le ferait avec son odeur. Je ne fais pas ça d'habitude, tu sais, aller chez les gens, tu comprends? Aucun de mes gars ne t'embêtera plus jamais, Inch'Allah. Elle a levé les yeux vers lui, et comme elle pensait à Yaro, il y avait des larmes dans ses yeux. Mais il a hoché la tête et s'est retourné pour partir. I think I'll stop it there. This is just the first page. And so this is wonderful Reza, you know, from
Everybody
season.
loves Reza.
Yeah, I know. Everybody loves Reza. So Reza is meeting this, well, a phone has been lost. So he's come to give it back and it's going to work. So this is the English one that you sent. He scaled a fence yet again, as he had done twice already, at 11:15, because he knew, by careful consideration, that if she had not gone to the madrasa, she would be alone. Having gone round to the front, he peeped from behind the wall and saw her watering the beds of petunia that had not been there the last time he had taken the liberty to invite himself. He watched her scooping water from a yellow bowl and sprinkling it on a plant. She put down the bowl and straightened, one hand on her back, the water dripping from the fingers of the other. She turned slowly, and their eyes met. He came out from behind the wall, and she tentatively threw an arm across her breast and immediately put it down. Good morning, his voice faltered, but he bowed briefly and held up his hands in front of him. She placed a hand over a thumping heart. I just brought back your phone, you understand, as promised. He gently reached into his pocket, the other hand still held up, and pulled out the phone. He held it up for her, and she considered it for a while. Finally, she nodded. He moved forward slowly, extending the phone to her. Sorry about everything. He watched her run a thumb over the phone, as if to reassert her ownership, marking a possession like an animal would with its scent. I don't usually do this, you know, go into people's houses. You understand? None of my guys will ever bother you again, inshallah. She looked up at him, and because she was thinking of Yaro, there was a watery gleam in her eye. Thank you. So that was the short extract I wanted to read.
Thank you very much, Edwige. I think I need to come on camera for this particular thing, and I hope it doesn't flicker. So you know, oh, it's flickering again, so I have to switch on. You know, in Kenya, when Season of Crimson Blossoms came out, and a lot of people read it, a group of people started a group that's called Friends of Reza, and you just showed that Friends of Reza is indeed international.
It is.
So thank you for that extract.
Thank you.
Sandra, can we get an excerpt from you, and would you kindly tell us what you're reading from?
Yes, I'm reading one of the texts that we did for this piece. So it's an excerpt from Radiance of Tomorrow by Ismail Bea. I wish I could share with you some of the other texts that I did so far, but they are close to 30 right now. And as a mother, it's pretty difficult for me to tell you which one is my favorite, because I think that when I delve into a project, it becomes my favorite until I decide to let it go. So here we go. Não importava quem estava presente nem porquê. A vila toda tinha de vir escutar uma história de Mama Cádia e de quem mais emocionasse para contar. Esta era a tradição. Os anciãos, na maioria mulheres, contavam uma história e os outros anciãos juntavam-se depois. Algumas noites, continuava mesmo até as crianças serem chamadas a recontar as histórias que tinham ouvido. Hoje, Mama Cádia estava de pé dentro do círculo e caminhava à volta da fogueira enquanto contava a história, ajustando a lenha de quando em quando para avivar ou esmorecer a chama, dependendo de se a lenda estava ao rubro ou não. Alguns rapazes sentados, mas afastados, gradualmente foram-se aproximando. História, história! E o que eu faço contigo? Gritou ela. O chamado para o contador começar e a audiência respondeu. Conta-nos, para podermos passá-lo aos outros. Ela repetiu algumas vezes até todos pedirem para lhes contar a história. Havia um homem que sempre que se queixava do seu estado e estava insatisfeito com todos os aspectos da sua vida, especialmente sobre o seu único par de calças que tinham furos por toda a parte. Dava para ver partes das carnes dele pelas calças, então de longe parecia que ele tinha calças achadrezadas. Quando ele se aproximou, não dava para segurar o riso pelo embelezamento natural das calças dele. Em pouco tempo, todos os jovens de calças furadas referiam-se a elas como um novo estilo, pele a pano. Give me 1 second to find the original in English. Zukiswa, maybe you can say a little words because I'm working not on my PC.
Sure, sorry. I muted because I didn't want you to hear any background noise. But yes, please, let's hear the original in English from ready until tomorrow.
Right? Yeah, because network in Africa is a little bit sketchy sometimes to find things. It's difficult. Please bear with me.
Okay, no, absolutely.
No matter who was present and why, the entire town had come to hear a story from Mama Katie and from whoever else be moved to tell. This was a tradition. The elders, mostly women, would tell a story and the other elders would join afterwards. Some nights it would go on until even the children were called upon to retell stories they had heard. Tonight, Mama Katie stood up inside the circle and walked around the fire as she told the story, adjusting the wood every so often to make the fire brighter or duller depending on the mood of the tale. Some of the boys who had sat away gradually came closer. Story, story, what should we do with you? She had shouted. The call for the teller to start and the audience responded. Please tell it to us so we can pass it to others. She went on for a number of times until everyone was asked to be told the story. There was a man who always complained about his condition and was unhappy with every aspect of his life, especially about his own pair of trousers, which had holes in them everywhere. Part of his flesh could be seen through the trousers, so it looked from afar as though he had on checkered pants. When you got closer, you could not help but laugh at the natural beautification of his trousers. Soon, all the young people whose pants had holes in them were referring them as a new style, skin to cloth.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Right, and maybe I'll go immediately to you before I move to Edwige. Why did you choose the excerpt that you just did? Sandra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear perfectly.
Okay.
As I told you, I don't have any favorites, and storytelling for me has a long tradition in my family. So these gatherings around the fire where the old women, the matriarchs would tell a story really resonated with me. And I live in a very poor neighborhood around Maputo, 26 kilometers away. So having this skin to cloth fashion is not something that it's, how can I say, we see this so often. And to see how Bear put this in this story and the way the story and then develops and then you see how it ends, it's wonderful. So I really wanted to share with you this little excerpt. And I always enjoy the projects that you bring in to me, Zukiswa, from Yara Monteiro. I can't thank you enough because they are projects that seem goddess sent, because I think about them just a few seconds and then here comes Zukiswa and telling me, please translate this, and I feel so happy afterwards. So this is why I chose this one.
Well, I think it's really because you do such an amazing job of the translations yourself that I always feel like I am reading something beautiful, and I get and I think we talked about this earlier with you and me and Edwige, how when you guys actually do the work, it's everybody assumes that translation is literary, but it's never really quite that, is it? Edwige, you're muted, Sandra.
Yes,
I was asking Edwige if she would like to start with this one.
All right.
About the fact that translation is literary, did you say? I didn't just catch the last part.
Well, no, most people think that translation is like, oh, if you can speak a word, but it's actually an art form on its own because you have to reimagine things, isn't it? And rework.
Yeah, I actually don't know who are these people who think that I know them. I know some of them.
Exactly.
I know some of them, and like before I used to defend myself, and now I'm like, I don't care. Like for instance, like I mean, yes, I wouldn't go back again to throwing you flowers about the project you bring. They're always like beautiful. But for instance, this text of Abubakar Adam Ibrahim that I just read, I mean, I enjoyed translating it, and it actually took me, because I grew up in the north of Côte d'Ivoire, which is a very it has a very Islamic culture, and it has those weathers from like Jos and that sort of thing. So I could see like these people, I could see how they will speak. For instance, I went to the Chu instead of like when Reza was talking to what is the woman name again? Is it Abiba? I've forgotten. But when he was talking to that woman, well, usually.
Yeah, but you remember Reza.
Yeah, no, I remember. I'm a pro. So, so when he's speaking to her, maybe like somebody who speaks classic French will say, well, when you meet a person the first time, because this is kind of a real first meeting, you go for the vous. But when I think of the north of Côte d'Ivoire, when I think of somebody like Reza who didn't go far in school, for him saying who will be like insulting this person. So you go with the true form, which is which again in classic French can be considered too intimate for a first meeting, but in this context it works. So I think translation is about taking all of those things into consideration, like taking the context, but also having the cultural intelligence to translate and to interpret what is being said. And really, for me as an African translator, it is really important for me because oftentimes you've had work where that cultural intelligence has not been taken into account. And then, we live in a very fragile world. This is still a very capitalist world. I really, as I've said like before, and I'll say it again, translation for me is activism. It is a political act. So, you need to be careful. We're not just dealing with words. We're not just dealing with Portuguese or French. It is what are we conveying here, and what is the humility as translators we need to have when we decide to tread where even angels wouldn't dare.
Okay. So, which perhaps leads me to another question that I'll also throw to Sandra. So, Sandra, listen, because I will need you to answer this question as well. And the question is, do you then suggest that there is, say, an Ivorian French and perhaps a Mozambican Portuguese, as opposed to a French or Portuguese, and how do you move away from being a language purist, for instance, a classical French or a classical Portuguese translator, and ensure that you have immersed yourself in a particular world of the person you're translating? So, for instance, I imagine that if you're going to be Sandra, when you had to do loose ties, you had to put on your Angolan and therefore African cap, if you will. And the same with you, Edwige, when you've had to do all the different translations that you've done for waterbirds, for instance. in the different African nations. So yeah, translation, language, these European languages and African languages. What are your comments on that? What do you do with them? And do you fear that you might be accused of doing the wrong thing when you're not doing it classically?
Not at all, Zukiswa. Actually, I'm pro valuing our variants. In Portuguese, we do have many variants. That metropolitan from Portugal is no longer the same that we speak in Mozambique, and that was reflected in Yara's novel as well. The challenge here was translating it into another colonial language that is not my mother tongue. So I had that added challenge in that particular project. And I will never be a purist, because I think that in addition to having to value what is African, and being here shows that we are creating this network that enables translations that are of African texts by African translators. And I think that this changes completely the outcome in terms of what kind of English loose ties is completely different if you had commissioned UK-based translator to do that. And when I translate into Portuguese, my mother tongue, I always like to use the colloquial Portuguese that would be accessible to most Mozambicans. We have to look at my country and understand that we still have a high illiteracy rate. And I don't know if it's our way of showing our appropriation of Portuguese, of making it our own variant that is completely different from the one that is spoken in Angola, different from the one spoken in Cape Verde and the other Palop, and also that is oceans away from the one from Brazil. We see that it's not a pidgin, it's not a dialect, it's a language of its own, and it needs to be to appear in literature. It needs to appear in written form. Tomorrow I'll be interacting with the 9th cohort of young translators that entered into the competition, the one that gave rise to the origin of Editora 3009. And we'll be discussing exactly that sometimes they try to be purist. They try to emulate what an European writer would, or translator in this case, would use. But I'm against that. I think that we can all contribute with our, I don't know, our background is somehow reflected in the text that we bring. And I think that being mixed, because we are all mixed here, we are Muslims, we have Muslims in the family, we have Catholics in the family, we have white people in the family, we have Chinese. So I think that in a way, all of those cultures make this new version, either in the English that is reflected in loose tie, or the Portuguese that is in my translation, or this young people's translations of texts from French or English or other European language, that makes it completely different. And I think that's a richness that we should promote. So no purism at all. I'm pro 100% making a new language and making sure that we claim it as our own. So we can say that there is a Mozambican Portuguese, and that there is a literature, a body of literature that's growing because of us in Mozambican Portuguese.
Fantastic. I think one of the more interesting things, by the way, about your translation of Loose Ties is a Kenyan reader who reads Portuguese was amused at the blurb because of the blurb is in English, but it uses the word povo, which is kind of like a wink nod to Southern Africa, because even though Mozambique and Angola are the two only Portuguese-speaking Southern African countries, everybody understands certain words like povo and viva and basha and so forth and so on. So I had then to tell him that because it was primarily for a Southern African audience, we knew that the audience would understand it. And it was just a familiarity that was lovely. What other things did you find maybe like when you were doing that particular translation that made you think, oh, okay, this is something that I'm going to do just purely like for readers from Southern Africa or whatever, that I know they will understand, but maybe like somebody from the UK will be like, what the hell is she saying?
You know, one of the things that I have, and maybe that's because I'm a Leo, I think that I'm my reader. So I am translating for me, for my own pleasure and for my, of translating, and then my own pleasure of reading it. So at the time, I didn't consider just Southern Africa at all. I was thinking we have Mozambicans who speak English. We do have Angolans who speak English. And one thing that I really enjoyed working with you, Zukiswa, was that we resonated in so many things, because you remember that the original text is in Portuguese. So the Portuguese variant, the European one, I would say. And then you had some texts in there that are in Kimbundu. And then we had a lot of author's notes and then a glossary, if I'm not mistaken. And we decided not to do that. Because of that, we had so many discussions that we understand that in Mozambique and Angola, if we say Jeep, we mean any type of SUV. If we say Omo, we mean any type of
washing powder.
Exactly. So, and when we were talking about Patu and Boda, those were the words that you said, okay, no, let's keep them and let's not italicize anything. This is our language, and let's keep it, give it the same weight as English, and keep the text so unpolluted, and so the reader would have a smooth experience. And anyway, we can Google anything we don't know anyway. It's easy. It's at the tips of our hands. So I really enjoyed doing this, of providing a book that would be intimate to the reader, in terms of they can like it or hate it, and they can carry on reading to the end or just drop it, but they wouldn't be stopped to be checking a glossary at the back, or reading a footnote or translator's note, or going to something that would disrupt their experience. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. Edwige, over to you. What would you, your ideas of footnotes, glossaries, and so forth and so on? And I know we didn't do it when we did Waterbirds, and we certainly did not do it with Artistic Encounters. But have you ever considered, is this something that you would consider if somebody saying, Edwige Dro, we're paying you enough money, but we need you to put a glossary in the text?
Well, it is a very well-known fact that literary translators are not paid enough. So I don't know how much money these people are going to be paying me to say we are paying you enough money. I'll be like, do you know my idea of enoughness? So no, I hate the thing with glossaries. Like I've explained to some of, like, when I do literary translation workshops, and you see sometimes, because we have a way of speaking in our different countries, even as we're speaking English here now, we have a way of speaking this English that for maybe a British person who has never stepped out of England will be like, bizarre for that person. And I do not see why I'm going to be putting glossaries, because it is a way of saying that, this English or this French that I'm speaking is not on a par with the good French. But if we have a notion of good French, well, I won't know, because I didn't go to France until 2014. And I only went for 5 days or something, and it was in Marseille. I was born in 1984. So all of this time I've been living in my country, chilling here. So I cannot know what is good French. But I know that when an Ivorian speaks French, everybody can understand whether they went to school or didn't go to school. And so when I do literary translation workshops with, young translators or everything, and they're trying to put themselves into this mold of what is supposed to be the good French, I tell them, why are you forcing yourself? I mean, you yourself haven't been to France. You are the kind of people who pray for a visa to go to France. So why are you forcing yourself? Just, translate. And then, we get onto the question of audience. Yeah, but what if a French person does not understand what I'm saying? And I'm like, why do you think that your audience is a French person? If you, as a translator, living in Cameroon, living in Togo, living in Kenya, is translating, I think it's for your own ears first. If you assume that this audience is you, it is you who is going to be reading this text. So when I translate even into English, I think, how will Zukiswa read this? I really do. I really, really do. I think, how will Zukiswa read this? How will Abubakar Adam Ibrahim read this? I don't think of some mythical person sitting somewhere in England because I don't know them. So, that's how I work around translation. And, and I think we need to have, we are having a conversation. So how can you have a conversation with somebody where you are always putting yourself on the lower rank? Like, I am not like you, please accept me. No, we are not, so I do not do the glossary thing. I hate it. I think context is very clear when you are translating a text, or even when you are writing something. I do not agree with footnotes, any of those things. I think context, context explains.
Fantastic, thank you for that. And perhaps we now have to ask you that very important question. Are you translating any African languages?
Sandra,
somebody asks it in the
Zukiswa.
audience. And both of you, I'm going to ask you that question.
Okay, I can answer that. I am translating into Kuration and Shangana, but not myself, the publishing house. Because at some point after 3009 was born, I read this appalling statistics that only 11% of Mozambicans could speak Portuguese. And I said, and I'm publishing in Portuguese, come on, so I'm so wrong. And it was about the same time that I also found that our average age is 18, so I should be start publishing to children. So that's what we do. We publish picture books and chapter books in bilingual editions of Portuguese, Xangana Portuguese for the southern region of Mozambique, Portuguese Sena for the central, and Portuguese Makua for the northern. But the thing is, I don't speak any of those languages myself. I am born to a family of southern father, northern mother. They don't speak the same language. So my mother tongue is Portuguese. And I feel that I lack that ability, not only to ensure quality control of the projects, but also because I think that I should be able to communicate with my countrymen and countrywomen. And sometimes it's very frustrating with me. I find it very frustrating to not be able to speak any of the languages. And it's so difficult to start learning because there are so few glossaries, so few dictionaries, that if you don't have an immersive experience, if you're not in an environment where you are unable to communicate in Portuguese, there's no way of doing that. And I'm stuck, but at least I'm making sure that 3009 is doing its part in producing, because we do have oral tradition. So the only book that I think that is translated in all Mozambican languages, there are 42 of them, is the Bible. So we are doing our part to growing the number of books available in Mozambican languages, at least those three.
I really absolutely love that your publishing house is doing that. And the reason that's very admirable is, even though you don't speak the language, I have certainly done a translation in Chivenda, which I don't speak, for my publishing house. I think it's then ensures that at least we have the languages available for future generations, because I think it's extremely sad most of the time that the only books that we have in translation in African languages is the Bible, and yet we want our children to be scientists. We want them to be writers. We want them to be librarians. We want them to be musicians and stuff. But we are not. We are saying that these languages, our languages, we don't have music books, for instance. If we want our children to be musicians, we don't have music books translated in Shangani or Bambara or any other African languages. So I think that's a fantastic way to go. I mean, obviously we're still very much at the beginning, but I do think that's a wonderful way to go. Edwige, do you do any translations in African languages? Are you interested? You have a library, 1949, which has, and sometimes you have children over there. What are the initiatives that you're doing to get them excited about literature, but not just in French, even if it's an Ivorian French, but also in the languages that they might probably speak at home?
You know what is interesting about this translation in African language is, we need to contextualize it. So when Sandra was speaking, she was like, like in Mozambican language, and Mozambican, like only 11% speak Portuguese and that sort of thing. Like in my country, 90% of the people speak French. D'accord? It won't be French from France, huh? So don't let a French person come here and start speaking the voulez-vous. We may not or may understand you. So, so 90% of the population speak French because of a politic that came across during the independence. This was the wish of our first president, just because he didn't want any coup d'etats behind his back. But then in the 70s, the people on the street started. This is where this Ivorian French started getting developed, like in the 70s, with where sometimes we do not use the articles, so we might not say la table, we might just say table, we might, so we'll just remove the articles, the verbs might not be conjugated and those stuff. And then those were the university people doing that so that they could speak freely. And then the people on the street develop a language called, I froze. Am I back again? I'm moving. Okay, good. Thank you, Sandra. So then on the street, you had the Nushi that was developed, and this Nushi heavily used the 70 words from the 70 languages in all of Côte d'Ivoire. So if I do projects at the library, I really want it to be, or what, the writing workshops, the stories that we read, I want it to be in this Ivorian French, for the simple reason that I want to, to say that this language is also valuable. We do not need to, because you go to official ceremonies here in Côte d'Ivoire, and then the French you hear, even a French person told me once, my goodness, you guys are speaking French that we no longer speak in France. It is so old. You're like, why do we do that to ourselves? So nobody understands. So my ambition now is to have literature in the French that 90% in Côte d'Ivoire, in Côte d'Ivoire speak. And then on the question of language, I may not do written translation because there is no point. Just because these 70 languages are not written. We are trying to do some stuff in Bamanakan at the moment, but the Bamanakan, which is from which originates from Mali, is different from the one that is speak here in Côte d'Ivoire. There is the purest form, ours is diluted form, just because it is a language of trade. But I think we also, shouldn't think that just because we are translating into French or into Portuguese or into English, we are losing our language. Language are, living things. For instance, in Senegal, Wolof actually is spoken by 20% of the population, really, really. But then because it is everywhere in Senegal, because it is a lingua franca, some of the language, like Bapen, are instinct, almost instinct. So there is this thing who is trying to bringing back and that sort of thing. So sometimes these languages, politics, a political matter. You know, we need writers, translators, but we also need the stage. I mean, it is not you, Zukiswa, or me or Sandra who, you know, who are going to be making these languages, you know, great, you know, so that everybody speaks it. But if I do translation, I may do like audio translation, like into languages in, you know, and it may not be in Abidjan. So it may be like a children's book translated into Baoulé, but we will share it in Boaké or Nyam Sokro. It may be loose ties in Bambara, you know, heard in Ojene. And, you know, that will create like other conversations also. So that's my take on this.
Thank you very much for that. And I would probably like to ask if there are any questions. I am unable to look at the YouTube right now. So could Nicole, could you let us know whether there are any questions from the audience?
Hi.
And we only have 15 more minutes.
Hi, Zukiswa.
Yes.
No, there aren't any questions from YouTube. But if I have a question I would like to ask, if that's okay. Yeah,
Fine.
okay, good. So thank you so much, Sandra and Edwige and Zukiswa, for this interesting insight into your translation process. Quite at the beginning, you mentioned the importance of the cultural intelligence and also the knowledge of a certain culture or context. And I was now wondering, in the context of our exhibition, Artistic Encounters, if you know some of the authors represented personally, and if so, if that was either helpful or if that was either the opposite. So if you had, you know, endless discussions about certain passages, or if that didn't really matter. The question is for both, I guess. Yeah.
Sandra, do you want to go?
Yes, I do. I do know some of the authors. Virgilia, she's from my hometown. I think that she lives really close to where I am right now. And no, I'm a person that's very shy to bother authors. And I think that they only peek at my work after it's done. At the moment I decide to let go. Some of my colleagues like to ask questions. I'd rather check other sources than bothering the author. What I like to do with authors is grabbing a glass of wine. And that's another criteria that I have for translating someone. If I can't drink a glass of wine with them, I won't translate them.
I like that.
I'm telling you, right? Sandra, I love you. I love your attitude.
You drink a beer or wine with a writer.
She's not going to translate them. I think, like Sandra, also, I do not have much conversation. I think when I was, you know, talking of cultural intelligence and context, so I do not know Yara Monteiro. I translated an excerpt. I just read a lot about, you know, Angola during that time. I trusted that Sandra did the job. I think also you need to, because it came to me into English, so it didn't come to me in Portuguese. It came to me in English, and that was the work of Sandra. So I trusted that Sandra has done a good job because I know the work of Sandra. I know the process that she uses for translation. And I think with many translations, that's what I do. I read the work. I try to familiarize myself with the work. Sometimes you listen to music. Music is a good thing to listen to of that period, or the general music going on around that period. It is nice to listen. Then you get some of these words. You imbibe yourself as much as you can, you know, in that culture. I mean, recently I've been translating Aya de Yopougon from you know, from French, so from that very Ivorian French into English. And, you know, I really had fun because I was chatting with my Cameroonian friends about like different words, into Cameroonian Pidgin English. I listen to the music. I listen to lots of stuff by Cameroonians. I think I can do a good Cameroonian thing at the moment. So it is those sort of things that you do. And then if I'm really stuck somewhere, like understanding, then I'll go to the writer maybe and ask them, did you mean this? Otherwise, I kind of, do the work.
And one thing you said, Edwige, that really resonates with me is this bridge translation thing. Some people frown at it, but I think it's essential. You don't speak Portuguese, so you had to come through me to be able to translate it into French. And with me, it happens all the time. I've been translating authors from Egypt, from Morocco. I don't speak Arabic, so I have to trust on my co-translator. So I think that's the way we should be doing. And the music is always a great tool to give you that immersive and that cultural background that you need when translating projects. Actually, I always have a sound, how do you say this, a playlist for every project.
A playlist for every project is actually really nice. I weirdly, I'm also like that. I can't actually start any work without having a playlist. So bravo to that. But in addition to you guys translating, you also do some writing of your own. When do you park the one and do the other? And do you sometimes feel that being writers actually helps you become better translators? Or do you think that sometimes you're just like, well, you know what, actually, this person's story is not as good as it should be, and I can do better. So I'm going to translate it this way. That's it.
That's a tricky question, Zukiswa. I'm not a writer. I think that Edwige and I have discussed this on a recent essay that we had to do. And I feel like I'm an imposter because I don't know why people think that if you can translate, you can write. I think that some writers do translate and it helps them in their work somehow. But I think that, no, I'm a translator that people ask to write. And it's like extracting a tooth. It's so painful for me.
Well, but I mean, it's its own work of art though, Sandra, isn't it? I mean, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that you have to have the imagination, and you have to have so essentially you are doing the work of a writer. You are being a writer because it's not going to be the exact same text that, say, Zukiswa has written, or Yara has written, or Edwige has written, when you've done the translation yourself. I mean, if there's no if there isn't Mopani worms in Mosambik, it doesn't mean that you take the idea of Mopani worms as a food from the context of the book, does it? So it is a work of imagination itself. So I'm trying to figure out, do you improve on it? Do you just say, well, you know what, this is not good enough, so I'm just gonna go wild?
I never do that.
Oh.
I mean, if it's really, really bad, I just won't touch it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's if I don't like the project, it's one that I'm not going to finish. That's what's but sometimes it's tricky not to rewrite, but I think it's like what Edwige said, we have to understand the culture and then try to make it resonate with ours in a way, and particularly when we are dealing with variants and this completely different cultural settings. So yeah, sometimes I might make it a little better. A little better.
No, I really, really don't. But I think this is an ego thing. Like, if the writing is really, really bad, I'm not going to improve upon it. And I'll be like, no, I should have just written this thing. Like, why am I doing your work for you? Go and edit further and come back to me. If it's really bad. And if the project doesn't grab me, it needs to grab me. It is writing twice. Writing is hard enough as it is, and then you are trying to get into somebody's head, you are trying to get into this context, so it really needs to grab me where when I translate, I swear I taste the words. So if I cannot taste these words, I will not touch them.
And they don't pay translators enough for you to want to do it anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already getting gray hair already, so I'm not going to suffer unnecessarily.
All right. So what is, as we wind down, what is it that works for you in the next, what projects can we see from you? Now, I mean, you've done an amazing job both with Artistic Encounters and the translations, and of course, everything that we've done in the past. But what exciting things can we expect from you in the next year? You know.
Oh my God, don't ask me that. I've been attending one book fair a month, and that means thousands and thousands of exciting projects that are pitched to me. I know I speak from privilege because I'm the editor and the translator, so our meetings are very, very short and to the point. But oh my God, there's so many things. I just found out about this Korean graphic novel that I want to do. There are some novels from Korea. I still have to figure out how to find a translator to do a bridge project with. I'm translating an Arabic text with a fellow translator from Egypt. It's about Muslim feminists from the 50s, so I'm really excited about that. I didn't think I could find a Muslim. Yes, that's really her writing. Her name is Mai Ziadeh. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And the title is Girls' Expectations. So after reading Simone de Beauvoir, I'm excited about doing this. And also I'm trying to convince Chimamanda to let me translate her into Mozambican languages. And also Mina Salami, we have to translate those Afro-feminist ideas. So quite a lot in my plate.
Oh, that sounds exciting, and we can't wait. I certainly look forward to being in Mozambique in August so that we can chat about some of this over a glass of wine or three. Edwige, what's in the
whole
works
bottle of wine. Well, Aya is coming out, I believe next year. But personally, I am really interested in doing some kind of long poetry project that will mix Nushi French, Ivorian French, and some languages in Côte d'Ivoire, something around like, the women's contribution to literature, to art, to music, in Côte d'Ivoire. So that's what I am interested about. And I am writing, but I think I'm writing without any expectation at the moment. I'm trying to untangle the,
My
the
friend,
word.
I'm waiting for your edits from that manuscript that you sent me, because I sent you editorial notes.
Yeah, you sent me editorial note. Oh, you're waiting. You know what? I started doing it and I was like, I don't know. Okay. Well,
wow,
then.
I don't know. Please, just finish it, man. Just rework it. But with that said, I think
we're having a side conversation here.
We're almost out of time, but I really, hopefully, Edwige, why don't you board a jump and come to Accra in October, and then you and I can actually have this conversation over
three bottles of wine.
Over tea.
Sorry, I drink wine or beer. I'm more of a beer person. I think I
know you are. That's why I'm over tea.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Sandra, Edwige, do you guys have any last words before we get out? I think our time is up almost.
Always giving a shout out to all the translators. Edwige said it, we are underpaid, undervalued. Sometimes we don't even appear on covers or anywhere on books. So name the translator, improve our pay, and viva female translators.
Yeah, and viva especially literary translators from Africa. We need more of us. Seriously, we need more, to scatter this place.
Absolutely. And we look forward you see, I can never be on for more than a minute. And I was
I know.
hoping to see you guys for the last minute. But absolutely, we look forward to more translation and growing the landscape. And thank you so very much for being part of this discussion and for doing an amazing job with the translation for Artistic Encounters, which of course is exhibiting as part of Lit Africa 2 in Zurich up until September the 3rd. So if you happen to be in Zurich, kindly go to Strauhof Museum, and I promise you, you will not regret it. Beautiful texts, wonderful writers, wonderful visual artists, amazing musicians, and amazing as well actresses. And it just shows you what that you can do with a written word on this continent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Edwige.
Thank
and
you.
see you very soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.